So one of the things you talked about actually was collaborating with the Centre for Teaching and Learning, which nicely leads into the next presentation that will be given by Lorna Dodd, who is a Senior Librarian for Learning, Research and Information Services at Maynooth University, and Brian McKenzie, who is the coordinator of the Critical Skills Programme at Maynooth University. And just wanted to point out that the presentation, the story of GAeL, graduate attributes of e-learning, embedding information literacy through critical skills, collaboration and new curriculum. Actually, Lorna was awarded the Maynooth University Teaching Fellowship for this. So really looking forward to hearing it, Lorna and Brian. Thank you.
We were both awarded the fellowship. It's our collaboration. Our talk today is going to be a lot more practical than Siobhan's, which was very research-based, but I think a lot of our experience really echoes with Siobhan's findings, which is really interesting to us. The story of GAeL isn't so much about how we put together some online tutorials, it's really the story of our collaboration and how we got to work together on this whole process. And I know I don't need to kind of explain to people in this room the benefit for the library in collaborating with academic staff, but for me the really interesting thing is the benefit for the academic staff in working with the library, and that's why I'm really thrilled that Brian is here today with me to give that perspective. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Brian to give you a bit of context.
Lorna and I are going to collaborate on our presentation as well. So I just want to kind of outline from my perspective as the lecturer in critical skills what for me were the conditions for collaboration. And we like to think maybe that collaboration is a result of empowered professionals who share intellectual interests, but the other side of it is collaboration can be a result of people who are in an institutional environment that has budgetary constraints, who have competing demands and are under pressure, right? And that can also lead to collaboration. So in the terms of Maynooth University, there's a seismic shift in the curriculum. There's an entire reshaping of the curriculum and a huge component called critical skills added to the first year curriculum. And Lorna showed interest. She was able to get a seat at the table there, which she'll talk about more in a little bit. But the other thing was that the new curriculum was interdisciplinary by definition. And I think this is interesting for me. I'm a historian by training, but I think that if you take an interdisciplinary approach, you're actually having the students view the library in a different way than if you were coming at it from a straight disciplinary angle about how students view the library as a disciplinary resource or not. And then the other interesting thing about collaboration, I think, is whether or not it's enduring, structural, or whether it can be sort of a result of is it fragile, is it idiosyncratic? I'm committed to information literacy, obviously Lorna is as well. And we were operating in an environment where I was brought in with this new program and needed to make it work straight off the bat. Now, the critical skills, very quickly, it's a new program at Maynooth University. It's 15 credits, so it's an entire full-blown year, first term, second term. And it's open to all students, regardless of their degree program. So science students, history students, it doesn't matter. Any first-year student can enroll in this critical skills program, okay? Now, the critical skills program is a result of an overall curriculum revision, and this was chaired by the president and had to develop the idea of what are called Maynooth graduate attributes. So this is the idea that there are graduate attributes that all Maynooth graduates share regardless of their degree program. Some of this is the outgrowth of interviews and research conducted with employers who provide feedback on what graduates lack when they get to the workplace, right? So they're good engineers, but they're not good at public speaking, or they're good engineers, but their writing skills are weak. So that feedback was basically gathered. There's an annual survey. And so the idea is that the critical skills program would provide the graduate attributes to backstop basically anyone from any discipline. Now, the crucial thing about the critical skills program is that the curriculum committee that set this up was very clear that this was not to be a study skills module per se. So the library already does some outstanding modules on study skills. But the critical skills program is essential that this be a academic course content, right? It's a 15 credit course content. So we're teaching things like qualitative research, quantitative research, epistemology, even intellectual property rights, right? All in an interdisciplinary context. And we're doing this in a way that relies on the information literacy in the library, right? So it's not a straight disciplinary delivery here. And the key distinction, this would have been one of the areas where faculty might struggle, is the content versus skill. So, okay, if I'm a historian and I'm teaching a class on the Second World War, I have to start with Poland and I have to finish with Hiroshima, right? And I have to get through it in one term. And if I decide that I'm going to spend 2 weeks on one subject, it means I have to take it out of a different subject, right? I have to do this, right? I have to get to point A to point B. If I'm teaching cell biology, similarly, there's a content that has to be covered, point A to point B, in the course of a term. The critical skills program is unique in that it's different than that. We don't have a content load that we have to cover. So if I want to spend 2 weeks on analyzing academic arguments and analyzing evidence and research, right? That's what we can do, right? I don't have to get from point A to point B. So I could really drill down and develop the skill, the academic skills, rather than focusing on content. And we are talking about rote learning and things like that. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Lorna.
Thanks, Brian. So these are what the university have identified as critical skills that students would have when they get through their degree program. And when I arrived in Maynooth, I was looking at this and things like problem solving, critical thinking, and it just leaped out at me straight away that really, it's working. Every single one of them is connected to information literacy in some way. So you can't evaluate information properly without being a critical thinker. In order to find information, relevant information, you need to have problem solving skills. Understanding plagiarism is part of understanding academic standards. So really the whole kind of premise behind this is that information literacy it's not a standalone thing. It's not something that, you know, the critical skills student will now be sent off to the library to learn how to be information literate. It's that as they are developing all of these academic skills, the information literacy is tied in with that. So when I reviewed that, it just seemed really obvious that this was a real opportunity for us to be heard as the experts on campus in the area of information literacy. We take responsibility for ensuring that students develop those skills, and as Brian said, we have always been running programs in the library. But this was a very high-level, important strategic initiative across the university that the president was taking personal responsibility for. And a lot of the work we do is very much on the ground. We build relationships with academics and we kind of work our way up through the layers of administration to try and get our voice heard. But because the president was looking for input from all parts of the university, it gave us an opportunity to be at the top table at the very beginning and having an influence on how information literacy was designed, delivered and assessed throughout the entire curriculum, which for those of us who work in kind of supporting teaching and learning is kind of the holy grail within libraries. So before I kind of sat down and presented what it is we wanted to do and how we could do it and the benefit that we could bring, we kind of had to just get our own house in order first. So we set about creating our own information literacy framework for Maynooth University Library. We based that on the new ACRL framework and the new curriculum for information literacy by Jane Secker and Emma Conul, and there's more information about that on our library website. So what we did is we identified what we felt were 5 key competencies that students should have in order to be classed as information literate. So it wasn't a set of standards or a linear process. It's that these are the things that they should be able to do, and there would be stronger emphasis on certain aspects depending on the discipline they were studying. So once we had done that piece of work, we took this, you saw this diagram a minute ago that Brian was showing you about a Maynooth education, and that image of the Maynooth education is sent out in all of the kind of promotional bump for the undergraduate programme. And we took our 5 competencies and we mapped it to the Maynooth education, and then we presented that to the committee that were looking at how do we implement critical skills. And I think that really resonated with people because they saw the relevance and the immediate application of what the library did. And the library, it's not just giving us a seat at the table for the sake of being there, that we would provide a really valuable input. So once we had done that, at this point Brian still hadn't been appointed, we hadn't got a critical skills coordinator, but the new academic year was coming really fast. So we decided to create a kind of set of services and resources for whoever was delivering these critical skills to support them in embedding information literacy. Now I have to say, our intention is never that a librarian would deliver to every single student in a face-to-face setting, as I'm sure most of you know. That's just not possible. So we had the influence at the top table and how it was designed and delivered. So we wanted to create resources that other people could use. So we organised having kind of train the trainer classes for tutors. We created an awful lot of guides and material for tutors to use. We are working on tutorials and quizzes within Moodle that can be they can be customised to suit whichever discipline there is. And we've created instructional videos and guides and kind of information on how to embed information literacy into assessment, like talking about things like annotated bibliographies. And then when I heard that Brian was being appointed, I met with him and I was ready with my pitch. This is what information literacy is. It's really important. This is how it's linked to all the other critical skills. I didn't even have to say any of it. Brian understood what information literacy was and already had come up with loads of ideas of how you could integrate information literacy with other critical skills, and it just made life for us so much easier. And I think actually we learned an awful lot from his approach, because we learned about how information literacy is really used in the classroom rather than just in the library session. And Brian's going to talk a little bit about that now.
Yeah, I think the key thing about this collaboration is it really empowered the curriculum. Okay, so I had an idea about what I'd like to do with the curriculum. Now we're looking at potentially 500 students maybe in this curriculum next year. And some of this is very high risk in terms of it needs to work well. Okay, and so you need good support to do innovative teaching. And so by working with the library and working with Lorna, I basically had the support, the security that I could have students who were competent in these core competencies that Lorna's already outlined, and then go forward with some critical skills curriculum working with Lorna. And for me, in terms of curriculum, the result of this collaboration is a Wikipedia assignment. So the students are contributing to Wikipedia, and I'm a huge fan of Wikipedia now. I'm a total convert, and I think it's really important in terms of that. For me, the students have the core competencies in information literacy. They have the core competencies in finding sources, in being proficient library users, and then they can basically apply these skills. And this is the Wikipedia article that students wrote, National Science Museum at Maynooth. Yeah, it was very interesting. The students loved it. They thought, most of the essays, I have another slide, we'll go to the essays that students write are basically read by an instructor, and then the essays that students write are basically read by an instructor and then marked and thrown into the bin. Right? The student essay is a twitch and a void, a compressed outpouring of energy if we're lucky that means nothing to no one. And there's also an argument that producing Wikipedia content more resembles the type of content that people produce when they graduate. In terms of, I mean, who's writing 3-page argumentative essays in professional life, right? Whereas producing Wikipedia content, so the argument goes, I think there's something to be said for it, more closely resembles what a lot of people do in their professional lives. And the students basically are so proud of their Wikipedia page, and they go back to it and they see that it's there and that it's lasting. But the point is that this is the end product in curricular terms of our collaboration, right? And so really arriving at this type of very rich learning experience for the students that is extremely positive, that's really wouldn't have been possible if I was sort of on my own without working with the library and without working with Lorna on this, so that the collaboration does affect the curriculum. Now, for me, the interesting point is it a lasting collaboration? Are we able to successfully embed it in the curriculum of Maynooth University or not, right? That's going to be the crucial thing, I think, going forward. But I'll hand back to Lorna now.
So one of the concerns I had, and I think any of my colleagues would have as well, is there's a slight sense of loss of control when we're not the ones in the classroom delivering information literacy, although it's just not physically possible. It has to be done in other ways. And the key thing to really identifying whether we are successful is being able to look at assessments or be involved in assessments in some ways, but that's another road we don't really want to go down either, is to start being involved in assessments too. So I had a chat with Brian about this, like how do we know that what we're doing is right, and how can we get it right? And Brian has designed an assessment rubric that he uses that I put on the screen here. It's probably not that easy to read, but he has 4 different areas in which students are assessed on. And when I looked at them, and I took our 5 competencies, I was really easily able to map each of the competencies onto a different part of the assessment rubric, which kind of validated all the work we put into developing this framework as well, because it really kind of comes into our own in this. So what I would like to do into the future, and I should say that what we've done this academic year is a pilot phase, and it gets rolled out full scale in September, is to get an anonymised sample of assessments and use this rubric with information literacy in mind. So we're not involved in assessments. We don't have that responsibility or that level or that workload, but we still have some sort of quality assurance, and we're still able to put some value on what we do. We put in this effort, and we can stand up and say that we are contributing to students developing a key graduate attribute identified by the university. So this comes to our teaching fellowship. So the pilot module started September, October, and in November there was a call for teaching and learning fellowships in the university, and we saw it just seemed like a really obvious opportunity. Unfortunately, the call didn't come out before the module started, so we put in a fellowship to develop a suite of tutorials and videos and guides that would support the development and the assessment of information literacy skills in Maynooth University. We weren't sure how it would go, because traditionally these things go to academics and not to kind of outliers like library and centre teaching learning, but we were awarded it, and so now we're full steam ahead at creating a full suite of these resources to come on stream to support what Brian does in the classroom in September. So just to conclude, this is just the list of topics, and I just wanted to give you the list of topics because we kind of flipped it on its head. Normally we would kind of have a tutorial on searching for information, finding stuff on your reading list, which is what we do that as well. But the idea behind this is that we were looking at the critical skills and information literacy being part of that. So it's using problem solving to find information. And it's critically thinking to evaluate information. So it's really what's relevant to what the student is doing rather than what we think the student should be learning in the library. So just in conclusion, this collaboration, the most significant thing I think about it is it's helped us move away from the traditional model of how we collaborate, whereas we build relationships with different departments, and we still do that, and that's still very, very important. But it gave us an opportunity to collaborate on a much higher level in the university and a much more strategic initiative, and Brian has questioned, will we be successful going forward? And I think because of the way it started, I think we've got a much better chance of the collaboration lasting going forward, because we have the support of very senior people in the university in this initiative. So for me, that's been one of the greatest benefits of doing this. It's really given us a model of how we can collaborate in other ways with the library and other units. So thank you very much, and we're happy to ask any questions you may have.